Welcome to the Ever Vigilant podcast with me, Joe Prim. This is podcast number 9. Tonight we're going to be covering the open arms part of the open concept. Quick review. The open concept consists of open your mind, open your eyes, open your ears, open your mouth, open your heart, and now open your arms. The reason I called this a concept is so that it could evolve over time, so that it could change. It's an idea, it's a thought, and as I've evolved and as I grow and think things differently, this concept may shift with me. That is why I have changed the name of this part of the open concept to Open Your Arms. I had originally named it and originally thought that open your hand was what the point that I was trying to get across. Now, of course, that has connotations of opening your hand for handouts or wanting to get something from somebody else for free. That was never the intent. My thought behind it was more of introducing yourself to new people, meeting new people, building your network, and getting to know new people that you normally wouldn't introduce yourself to or are outside of your normal group of friends, people from different professions, people in different lines of work, things of that sort. So the idea originally behind Open Your Hand was that you would be working on growing your network. Since I named this and since I started working on the open concept, my opinion on this has changed drastically, and that's why I've changed it to Open Your Arms. I've come to the opinion that growing and building relationships is much, much more important than building networks. Building your network and introducing yourself to new people and spending time and meeting new people can be very interesting and can be very good for you, but building relationships is of much, much greater importance. And we'll talk more about that tonight. I want to also make it kind of clear, too, the difference between open your heart and open your arms. Open your heart is really about deepening and strengthening the relationships that you have right now, that those relationships that are important in your life, especially with family, that you are very intentional about growing those relationships and making those stronger. Where Open Your Arms is more about meeting new people and building a tribe or building a small group of people or building even one good tight friendship that is important to you, more so than with the thought that after you open your arms to that person and that relationship is built over time, that you would open your heart to that person and deepen that relationship into a closer, more in-depth relationship. So in talking about meeting new people and building friendships, this is going to be slanted a little bit towards a male point of view. I don't really know or understand completely the female relationships, male relationships, and the modern view of male friendships. I completely understand and I completely can speak about firsthand, whereas female relationships, I can't speak to those. I think that you can still get a lot out of this podcast and you can learn a lot about opening your arms if you're a female, but this will be slanted more towards a male point of view, especially since right now in our culture and our society, male friendships are borderline extinct. You may be one of the rare people out there listening that has some very, very strong relationships with people other than family. You are very rare. The statistics show that the majority of men that don't have somebody that if they were out of town, they could make a phone call to check on their family. They don't have somebody that they could borrow $50 to $100 from. They don't have somebody that they could call for a place to stay if their home flooded. Men's friendships and relationships right now are like I said, they're borderline extinct. And there are many reasons for that. I myself have fallen into this trap. I grew up like most other young men in this country, looking at my father and seeing somebody who didn't have friends, that didn't spend time with friends, that spent his time with his family. And although I think that is very important to spend time with your family and your loved ones, we all need time and need relationships outside of that to keep us grounded, to live the way we are created to live, was to spend time with other men. So the things that I am sharing here, I'm speaking about firsthand and are things that I am learning and going through even as I do this podcast. Really, I think it comes down to 3 questions. Why has this happened? Why is this a problem? And what can we do about it? To answer this first question, why has this happened? I don't really want to focus completely and totally on why this has happened, because that's kind of not the real point of Open Your Arms, but I think it needs to be touched upon. There are many factors in making or putting men into this position where friendships are much more difficult, or men feel, and this is probably in most cases, men feel that they don't need friendships. And there are many, many factors involved here. But a few of them are these: the working women and feminism. The working woman and having women outside of the household working has put men into a different role as being part of family men. It has put men into a position very much different than they have historically been in. Historically, men went and did their jobs, and more so even, I think this goes back historically back beyond men just going off to work. But men would go into wars, men would go hunting, men would go do these other things to provide. Traditionally and historically, women took on the role of taking care of the children. And I am glad that our culture has given men a more predominant role in the raising of children, because number one, I thoroughly enjoy my time spent with my kids, and I feel it's very important. And maybe it was focused on a little bit differently historically and in the past. With women being gone at work and men taking on a more significant role there, it takes away from the man's time, and also puts men in a position where they feel that they have a different responsibility than they had in the past, therefore giving less time or making men feel like they have less time to spend building friendships or building relationships with other men. Another big factor is home access to entertainment. In the past, men would meet at bars for entertainment. Men would be much more apt to go on a hunting trip together, or go fishing together, or go do other things together, whereas now it's so easy and so simple to sit back at your computer and, I suppose for some people, just watch a lot of cat movies on YouTube. The access to things like Netflix and the binge watching of Netflix, to playing video games, these things also have a drastic effect on the amount of time that men spend with their friends, because they have something else, another way of entertaining themselves. Another factor, I believe, in this, I talked about this in the last podcast, Open Your Heart. I talked about the fake social media friendships, and I believe this is a factor, because although there is no depth whatsoever to these friendships, there is nothing at all there. I believe people are fooled into believing, subconsciously or consciously fooled into believing, that there is some sort of value to these relationships that they have online with people. I personally believe that probably couldn't be anything further from the truth. Another big one is homosexuality and the fear that men these days have of being lumped into that category. It's a very interesting phenomenon because I was reading an article on the art of manliness, and it was talking about men in the 19th century and how it was very normal for men to hold hands, or like President Abraham Lincoln shared a bed with another man for many years. Men spent a lot of time together and were in these situations that these days we would look at as strange behavior, or because of the whole issue of homosexuality and its prevalence in our society, or at least its flaunting in our society of prevalence, there's a real fear of men to appear weak, be called homosexual because of a closeness to another man. And like I said, in that article is very interesting because at that time in the 19th century, this was something that was never thought of, was never contemplated, was something that never entered the mind of these other men. They were close because more than likely were going through life-threatening issues, especially those that were out in the frontier, or mountain men, or during the gold rush, things like that. Those people were put into precarious situations where they were very reliant on other men for their security and for their livelihoods. And a closeness, a very tight bond grew, but that bond was able to grow in different areas because there was no fear of being labeled homosexual or feeling that there was something more there than just a friendship. Those are the reasons, just kind of quickly and briefly, why I believe this has become an issue in our society and in our culture. Part of the reason why men are so slow to embrace close relationships with other men. Question number 2 is, well, why is this a problem? This is a problem because it isolates men, and this is not the way we were created to function. We were created to function in small tribes, small people groups, where men spent a lot of time together, hunting, fishing, in competitions, and protecting the tribe or the village. That was a job that was done by all men. All men were expected to participate in these activities. They all worked together for the common good of the tribe. The survival of everybody depended on that. The stats show that people with good, healthy, strong male relationships live happier and live longer. We all have an inherent need to feel needed, to be part of something bigger than ourselves, to feel respected, and to feel that we're contributing to something. Being part of one of these, a tribe or a group of friends, helps you feel that way. It eases your fears and your tensions because you know that somebody has your back should you go through a difficult time or have something that you're worried about or fearful about. And I'm not saying this even just from a psychological point of view where you need somebody to sit down and talk to and they're going to help you. There are real definite fears out there. Being out of town and having your wife call up frantic or very worried that something's going on, or not being able to get a hold of your wife, and being able to call a friend and say, hey, do you mind swinging by and just make sure everything's okay, can really ease some tensions and fears without getting law enforcement involved in something that is really not their concern, something that you should not have to bother law enforcement with. To be able to have that peace of mind to know that you can call somebody and they will, without a question, stop by and check on your family or help out if there is an issue, your stove goes out, just something simple like that, and be able to call somebody if you were out of town or away to check on something like that for you would be invaluable. It helps you make better decisions. If you have a close relationship with somebody and they know you and they have an idea of things that are important to you and what makes you you, they can definitely help you make better decisions. You are not alone then in making these decisions. You got somebody that knows how you think and knows how you feel and can go ahead and call you out if you're off base on a decision that you're trying to make. Having close relationships with friends gives you confidence. You know that you can say what you need to say or do what you need to do because you have somebody that has your back. You have somebody that's behind you, knows you and understands who you are and what you stand for. Having a good friend, a close relationship keeps you on the right path, keeps you going in the direction that you intend to go. A good friend will call you out and will help you make corrections if you start going into the wrong direction. And having good friends, it can help you with tasks, whether it be something, a storm's coming in and you need to get a new roof on your shed, or getting your flooded basement drained out. Having a close friend that will drop what they're doing and change their plans to help you out because they know you will do the same for them will definitely give you a different type of peace. Another thing too is the suicide rates for men that don't have close relationships is very high. Don't have the numbers in front of me right now. The numbers are pretty staggering for middle-aged men committing suicide. That's tragic. Obviously, a lot of those men don't have close relationships, or they would have somebody that would be there to help them out, do many of the things that we just spoke about. And it's very sad that men are in a position where in their middle age, when they still might have young children or their children are in their teens, that they're ending their life prematurely. It's very sad. And talking about suicides, I was listening to another podcast last week. So this story is kind of third hand. I was not able to find anything on Google or reference back to find out the reporter that he was talking about. But he had a story about a reporter who had been embedded with the troops for many years and had been in many tours in Iraq. And he got to know and was very close to many of these soldiers that he was spending time with. And some of them started committing suicide. And he was very hurt by this and decided that he needed to turn his investigations and his journalistic profession into looking into what was going on with these suicides and why this was happening to people that he cared about. So he had originally believed and had thought that a lot of these suicides would be from soldiers that had spent a lot of time in combat, that had seen horrific things in war, and that these things were what had caused these suicides. And what he found out was that 50% or more of those that committed suicide had never even seen combat. And this led him and others to the belief that a big part of the committing suicide is reestablishing themselves and trying to get back into society. And one of the major differences between military life and our civilian life at this time is the relationships and the bonds. In the military, you are part of something. You are part of something bigger than yourself. It's not just about you and what you may want to do. There is a bigger picture that's looked at. And his belief was that in and of itself may very much contribute to the difficulties in acclimating themselves into getting themselves back into our sick culture that we live in right now, and that made it that much more difficult. So if that's the case, it's sad on many levels. It's sad that these guys are going and joining the military and becoming some part of something bigger than themselves, and something where there's a brotherhood, and coming home and realizing that nobody or very few people care about having that type of relationship. So That leads us into question number 3. What can we do about this problem? Like the other 5 points on the open concept, this is something we have to be very intentional about. This is something we have to think about. So you kind of look and say, where can I find friends? Number 1, look around you and look at your coworkers, your extended family, neighbors, gym that you go to, a club that you belong to, old friends, your church. See the people that seem to have similar interests to you. There's always some guy around, or I'm sure some girl around, that you look up to, that you see something about that you would like to pursue, whether it be a guy who's real fit and that's something you want to improve on, or whether it be a guy with a real nice car and you are really interested in cars, something along that nature where you already have something in common. And number 2, what are your interests? Follow them. Find a club or a group to join. You could join the VA club, join the church, join a sports club, a league for sports, bowling, shooting competitions, a hobby club, maybe airplanes, ham radio. It could be anything. And from there, that will give you a good opportunity to meet people of similar interests. Out of a larger group, number 3, you can build your own small group. Out of the larger group, you could try to set up a camping trip, some kind of hiking trip, small barbecue competition, family get-together night, shooting day, fishing day, hiking day, and all those could have some kind of little competition involved in it for best shot or golfing and closest to the pin, things like that. Get people together to do some sort of competition, go ruck, a mud run, Spartan races. You could do a church work days or church community days, and that will give you an opportunity if you came up with the idea of having some sort of activity. And keep in mind, men bond through activities, not by sitting around in a circle in some meeting room talking. Men bond by doing things together. If you had a larger group and you had an interest in barbecues, or you had an interest in shooting, and you said, hey, anybody that's interested, I'm going to host a day of shooting, cost such and such a person. We'll have, a couple competitions. Guys can take home a few bucks, but mostly just going to be a day of fun, just something small. Out of 20 people, 5 people, 10 people show up. All of a sudden, your group of people that you might be interested in building a relationship with or having things in common with starts to shrink. And from there, you can weed things down even further. Or maybe that group of guys that show up on those days end up becoming your small tribe. You never know. But until you start getting out there and doing these things, you'll be either by yourself or not building relationships with new people that 2 years, 1 year, 6 years from now could be very important in your life. So really for me, the end goal of this, and this is something I'm working on myself. I went out to breakfast with an old friend last week. A couple weeks before that, I went out for dinner with another friend. These are things that I have not done since I had gotten married, and especially since I had children. I'm not only talking about this, but as I've realized these things in my life, I am making the effort to change them. So I'm working on this right now. But really, I think your end goal, what you really want to try to accomplish by building these tighter relationships, is building a small tribe of men, or men and women. I believe families too, where you have somebody that you can be part of their lives and have them be part of your life, where you can be close and share your burdens with somebody else that's willing to help you out when you need a helping hand, because they know that you're willing to help them out when they need a helping hand. I think that this is important too, as the future is uncertain or becomes more uncertain, that we build relationships with like-minded people, because it could very well end up that we are more reliant on one another than we could have ever imagined at this point, where many of the things that we have for excuses on why we are not building or establishing these male friendships and relationships, where a lot of that just starts to go away and dissolve, and those of us that are left alone are going to be left alone. It reminds me of a saying that says, you can never have enough beans, enough bullets, or enough friends with guns. Friends, and especially friends with guns, are a good thing to have. So that kind of wraps up where I wanted to go with the open your arms part of the open concept. That wraps up the open concept. We covered all the points, and I'm excited to be done with this part of the podcasting. I'm going to do one more podcast and kind of wrap all 6 of them up together as one to make it easier for somebody that may be new to this podcast. Instead of trying to hit up each podcast, just be able to get a good review. I've added some things to the open concept and would like to clarify some things in the review podcast. So I hope you guys will check that out. You can always check out what I got going on Instagram and on Twitter. On both Instagram and Twitter, you can find me at The Ever Vigilant. The Ever Vigilant. Or you can shoot me an email at theevervigilantpodcast@gmail.com. Leave me some comments. Leave me some ideas for upcoming episodes, what you might be interested in talking about or learning about. Again, I hope you took something away from this, and I appreciate you listening all the way through, and God bless. Remember the 3 F's: faith, family, and freedom.